Good evening, everyone, and welcome to a brand new show that we're doing. This is the first of a number of shows that we're going to be doing based on AI stories from other YouTube channels. There's so much material now out there, and I'm thinking, why not make use of it? So this show is called Snow Sincerely Sucks. I'm doing it for Tidy Up Tuesday, which is a group that we have in the Performers to encourage cleaning, and to help folks that have mental health issues to clean and to want to clean. And today we're going to be shoveling snow, and we're going to be listening to some stories about snow. I have 3 stories on the playlist. I don't know if we're gonna actually do 3 stories. But it looks like there's quite a bit. I'm gonna show you. Yeah, there's quite a bit of snow there. So I'm thinking that we probably will end up doing all 3 stories. Hopefully not, but we'll probably do. If we don't do them all today, we'll do them next time, obviously, but hopefully we can get it all done in one story. Let's see. So we're going to have a story, and I'm going to be shoveling snow while the story's going on. So hopefully you'll still be able to hear the story, and you'll be able to see me doing the work. So please do join me. And yeah, actually we're on JCaster 25 today. I don't know where else I'm going to be posting this, but right now it's for JCaster 25. And this is Maggie Bray speaking. So anyway, I'm going to just put this in my film case. And then I'm going to grab my phone out. And I'm going to put this on. Cast button, notifications button, search button, settings. Switch account, Google account button, switch account. Goodness. View channel, bullet, button. I had the playlist already set, actually. 69 videos. Analytics, edit channel button. Analytics, edit channel, selected, latest, popular button. I want. Select edit channel, analytics, 69 videos, 7 button. Roy and Maddie, more action, search, cast, back, button, cast, search, more action, Roy and Maddie, button, 7 69 analytic, edit channel, selected, popular, oldest, selected, shorts, playlists, posts, playlist, there we go. Okay. Search, more actions, Roy and Maddie Gray, and then we're just gonna look for the Snow Sincerely Sucks playlist. Videos, top shorts, selected, playlist, Evil at 11, playlist, Feeling Through Nick, playlist. Yeah, we've got a lot of really great shows planned, so here we go. Playlist, Motivation Monday, public playlist, Snow Sincerely Socks, date added, newest, playlist, Snow Sincerely Socks, public videos, updated today, button. And we're gonna start the first story, search, button. And I'm gonna put the speaker on. There we go. There we are. Because this is not going to work without the Bluetooth speaker. HOA Karen locked the HOA van parking on manual. Here we go. HOA van parking on the street during Snow Sincerely Socks.
The world is divided into 2 types of people. Those who live their lives in blissful ignorance of homeowner associations, and the rest of us, poor saps, who know what it's like to have your life micromanaged by a board of power-drunk retirees with nothing better to do.
Amen.
I, Frank, am firmly in the latter camp. And the supreme leader of our little suburban Politburo was a woman named Brenda. It all started on one of those perfect autumn Saturdays. The air was crisp, the sky was a deep, cloudless blue, and the scent of decaying leaves was a sweet, earthy perfume. I was out front, leaning on a rake, admiring the masterpiece that was my front lawn. Every last maple leaf had been corralled into a dozen paper bags lining the curb. My grass was still green, and my F-150 was parked in its rightful spot on the street, gleaming in the afternoon sun. Life was good. It was simple. 55%. It was about to be ruined by the rhythmic clack, clack, clack of sensible shoes on asphalt. I knew that sound. It was the sound of impending doom. I looked up, and there she was. Brenda, marching down the sidewalk with the grim determination of a tax auditor. She was a woman who seemed to be perpetually braced for a strong wind, her gray hair shellacked into a helmet, and her face set in a permanent state of mild disapproval. In her hand, she clutched her weapon of choice, a clipboard. "Afternoon, Frank," she said, her voice managing to be both chirpy and condescending. She didn't slow down, just executed a sharp pivot onto my walkway. "Brenda," I said, offering a tight-lipped smile. "Lovely day." "It is," she agreed, though she said it like the day's loveliness was a temporary lapse in judgment by the universe. "Just delivering the winter notices. The board passed a new bylaw at last month's meeting." She detached a sheet of paper from her clipboard and handed it to me. It wasn't just paper. It was thick cardstock, professionally printed and placed in a kind of lamination usually reserved for restaurant menus or nuclear launch codes. This was a notice designed to withstand the apocalypse. My heart sank.
One face centered.
Never comes on laminated paper. "Thanks," I mumbled, my eyes scanning the official-looking header. Oak Haven Estates, Homeowners Association, Winter Mandate, 11B4.
Near left edge.
She gave a curt nod. "Make sure you read it carefully. It's effective December 1st. We're giving everyone plenty of notice." And with that, she clacked her way to my next-door neighbor Dave's house, a harbinger of bureaucratic misery. I waited until she was a safe distance away before I actually read the thing. The text was dense, full of legalese and $50 words for a 10-cent idea, but the core message was brutally simple. To ensure efficient snow removal by city plows and maintain aesthetic curb appeal during the winter months, all on-street parking is strictly prohibited from December 1st to March 31st, regardless of weather conditions. Violators will be fined $75 for the first offense, escalating, and are subject to towing at the owner's expense. I read it again, and a third time, hoping I was having a stroke and the words would rearrange themselves into something that made sense. They didn't. Regardless of weather conditions. That was the phrase that really stuck in my craw. A 4-month blanket ban. They had finally done it. They had weaponized winter. The problem, you see, was my driveway and my garage. I lived in a modest house with a 1-car garage and a driveway that could, if you squeezed, fit 1 car. The garage was my workshop, a sacred space filled with a table saw, a drill press, and a decade's worth of scrap lumber that I was definitely going to use for a project someday. It was not a car hole. That left the driveway, which belonged to my wife, Sarah. She was a nurse and often came home at odd hours.
One face near bottom left
She
edge.
needed was to play musical cars with me. So my truck, my faithful F-150, lived on the street. It had lived there happily and without incident for the 6 years we'd owned the house. That evening, I presented the laminated edict to Sarah. She read it, a frown creasing her brow. "Well, that's annoying," she said, setting it on the counter. "I guess you'll have to finally clean out the garage." "You're missing the point," I said, pacing the kitchen. "This is tyranny, Sarah. Tyranny by laminate, regardless of weather conditions. So if it's 60 degrees and sunny on Christmas Day, my truck can't be out front? Does the asphalt need to breathe? Is it getting a nice winter vacation? Frank, please don't get worked up. It's just a parking rule." "It's never just a parking rule," I insisted, pointing a finger at the notice as if it were a venomous snake. "This is about Brenda. Remember last year? The mailbox incident?" Sarah sighed. She remembered. I'd received a violation because my new mailbox was painted eggshell white instead of the HOA-approved antique white. The two colors were visually indistinguishable to any organism without a spectrometer for eyes. But Brenda had somehow noticed. I'd spent a weekend repainting a perfectly good mailbox to appease her. "This isn't about the garage, Sarah," I said, my voice low and serious. "It's about the principle of the thing. It's about Brenda thinking she's the queen of a 50-house fiefdom, and we're all just her peasants. This is a declaration of war." Sarah just shook her head and grabbed a glass of wine. "Just don't do anything stupid, okay?" I stared out the kitchen window, my gaze falling on my truck parked peacefully under a streetlight. It looked so innocent, so unaware of the bureaucratic danger it was in. A storm was brewing.
One face near top left edge.
It was in my head, and I wasn't going to let Brenda win. Not this time. My first move was to try the path of reason. I know. It was a rookie mistake. Attempting to reason with an HOA board is like trying to teach a cat to file your taxes. It's a noble zone. Effort, but ultimately pointless, and you're likely to get scratched. Still, I had to try. I put on a collared shirt, brushed my hair, and marched down to the community clubhouse for the November HOA meeting, armed with logic and a polite demeanor. The meeting was held in the clubhouse's sad little multi-purpose room, which smelled faintly of stale coffee and regret. Brenda sat at a folding table at the front, flanked by her two loyal lieutenants. Margaret, the treasurer, who guarded the HOA's meager funds with the ferocity of a dragon, and Tom, the secretary, a man whose entire personality consisted of nodding whenever Brenda spoke. About 10 other residents were scattered among the metal folding chairs, most of them looking as though they'd rather be having a root canal. When the floor opened for community concerns, I stood up. "Hi, Frank Miller, 124 Oak Street," I began. "I have a question about the new winter parking mandate." Brenda's eyes narrowed. "It's not a mandate, Frank. It's a bylaw. And it's for the good of the community." "Right, a bylaw," I said, forcing a smile. "My concern
Camera
is
controls.
with the
Stop recording
regardless of
video.
weather
Button.
conditions clause. It seems a bit restrictive.
Camera
For many
controls.
of us
Button.
with single-car driveways, street parking is a necessity. Couldn't we amend it to only apply during forecasted snow events, or when the city declares a snow emergency? It was a perfectly reasonable suggestion. A compromise. A sensible solution to a shared problem. Brenda looked at me over the top of her glasses. "The bylaws are clear," she said, as if that explained everything. "Making exceptions would only create confusion. The city plows need unimpeded access at all times. This new bylaw ensures a uniform and tidy appearance for our neighborhood throughout the winter season." "But the plows only come when it snows," I countered, feeling the first stirrings of frustration. "What about the other 90% of the winter when the roads are clear? It's a solution to a problem that doesn't exist." Tom, the secretary, decided to speak up for the first time. "The bylaws are clear," he echoed, nodding sagely. I looked around the room for support, but was met with a sea of averted gazes. No one wanted to get on Brenda's bad side. I was on my own. I argued for another 5 minutes, but it was like talking to a brick wall.
One face near left
A
edge.
very stubborn, condescending brick wall. I left the meeting defeated, the smell of stale coffee clinging to my clothes. Diplomacy had failed. It was time to go nuclear. For the next week, my evenings were dedicated to what I called the Covenant Deep Dive. I unearthed the 200-page Oak Haven Estates Homeowners Association Covenant, a document so dense and boring
One
it could
face
be
centered.
used as a general anesthetic. I sat at my dining room table with a pot of coffee, a pack of highlighters, and a growing sense of madness. Sarah would walk by, shake her head, and mutter something about getting a hobby. "This is my hobby," I'd reply, not looking.
Stop. Take picture. Button.
Particularly
Stop
thrilling
recording
section
video.
on
Button.
acceptable fencing materials. I was looking for a loophole.
Pause recording.
A
Button.
crack in Brenda's legislative fortress. I read every line, every subsection, every ridiculous addendum. I learned that my trash cans could not be visible from the street for more than 12 hours. I learned that I could not erect a satellite dish larger than 18 inches in diameter. I learned that wind chimes were subject to review by the Aesthetic Committee, which was, of course,
One face near left edge.
Brenda. But I found nothing about
Near top
parking
left
that
edge.
gave me an angle. It was nearly midnight on a Tuesday when I finally found it. My eyes were blurry, and my brain felt like scrambled eggs. I was in the addendum section, reading the fine print of the new winter rule for the 100th time. All on-street parking is strictly prohibited. The purpose of this bylaw is to facilitate unimpeded access for city snow removal services and to maintain a clear and safe roadway. The words swam in front of me. Facilitate snow removal. Maintain a clear and safe roadway. The rule wasn't about parking, not really. Parking was just the thing they were banning to achieve a different goal. A snow-free street. They had banned the cause, not the effect. And in that moment of sleep-deprived, caffeine-fueled delirium, a thought sparked in my mind. It was a terrible, beautiful, magnificent, and utterly insane idea. What if the spot was never snow-covered in the first place? My heart started to pound. What if my specific parking spot, the 20-foot stretch of public asphalt in front of my house, remained immaculately, perpetually clear of snow all winter long? If the stated goal of the bylaw was a clear road, and my spot was the clearest piece of road in the entire state of Ohio, how could they possibly find me? They couldn't. It would be a paradox. They would be finding me.
YouTube.
Flying
Now,
too
Amy and
hard.
family. It hurts Penny's
I
eyes.
stumbled into
Hashtag
the
talk
living room
income.
where Sarah was
Attachment.
reading on the couch. I've got it, I whispered, my eyes wide. Got what? Insomnia? She asked, without looking up. The solution to the parking problem, I said, my voice filled with the fervor of a mad scientist who's just reanimated a corpse. So what if the spot was never snowy? What if it was the single cleanest, safest, most ice-free patch of asphalt in the entire neighborhood, all winter long? She finally put her book down and looked at me. You mean you're going to go out and shovel it every single time it snows? At 3 a.m? Frank, be realistic. A slow smile spread across my face. Shovel? Oh no. Shoveling is for peasants. I was thinking something with a little more panache. Something with an engine. Something glorious. I grabbed my laptop from the dining table, typed furiously for a moment, and then spun it around to face her. On the screen was a grainy picture from a Craigslist ad. It showed a massive, boxy blue and white machine sitting in a dusty warehouse. The title of the ad read, 1998, Olympia Ice Resurfacer. Runs good, needs blade. It was a Zamboni. Sarah stared at the screen. Her eyes went from the picture to my face, then back to the picture. She was silent for a full 10 seconds. I held my breath, waiting for the inevitable lecture, the plea for sanity. Instead, her mouth twitched. A snort escaped. Then another. And then she was leaning back against the couch cushions, howling with laughter. Tears streamed down her face as she pointed a shaky finger at the screen. A Zamboni? She finally gasped, wiping her eyes. You're going to buy a Zamboni to fight with Brenda? Technically, it's an Olympia, which is like the Pepsi to Zamboni's Coke, I corrected, feeling a surge of pride. But yes. She shook her head, still giggling. I don't know if you're a genius or the biggest idiot I've ever met. Is there a difference? I asked, grabbing my phone. She just laughed harder. Go on then. Call them. I have to see how this plays out. With my wife's blessing, or at least her amused bewilderment, I dialed the number on the ad. The war wasn't over. It had just entered a glorious new phase. The thing about buying a 20-year-old multi-ton ice resurfacing machine off Craigslist is that it's not like picking up a used coffee table. There's no, yeah, I can swing by after work and throw it in the back of my SUV. This was a logistical Everest, and I was wearing flip-flops. The Zamboni, and I was just going to call it a Zamboni because ice resurfacer sounds like a boring piece of dental equipment, was located 3 hours away, just across
One face
the
near
state
top
line.
left edge.
It was housed at a defunct ice rink called Skate-A-Palooza, which, judging by the peeling paint and boarded-up windows, hadn't seen a palooza in at least a decade. The seller was a man named Jacques, a grizzled old French-Canadian with a handshake like a vice grip, and a suspicion of anyone who didn't smell like motor oil and stale beer. He looked me up and down when I arrived. You're the fella from the phone.
One face centered.
It wasn't a question. The one who wants the Olympia for, how you say, street purposes? That's me, I said proudly. HOA dispute. Jacques chewed on an unlit cigarillo for a moment, then let out a wheezing laugh that sounded like a rusty chainsaw trying to start. HOA. Bah. Bunch of old hands, eh? I like it. I like your style, kid. He led me into the dusty, cavernous rink. The air was cold and still. In the center of the warped wooden floor sat my prize. It was bigger than it looked in the pictures. It was a beast. A beautiful, boxy, propane-powered beast. The paint was faded. There was a bit of rust on the conditioner unit at the back. But it had a certain majesty. She runs good, Jacques said, patting its flank like it was a prize stallion. Propane engine, strong hydraulics, the blade's dull and she needs new squeegees, but the bones are good. We spent an hour going over the machine. He showed me how to start it, how to operate the augers, and how to raise and lower the conditioner. I paid him in cash, and he counted it twice. Then came the hard part, getting it home. I had rented a massive flatbed trailer, but the rink didn't have a loading dock. What followed was 2 hours of the most stressful, least safe engineering project of my life. It involved 2 very sketchy-looking wooden ramps, Jacques' ancient pickup truck acting as an anchor, a lot of shouting in a mix of English and frustrated French, and one moment where the whole 7,000-pound machine teetered precariously on the edge of the trailer. But, by some miracle, we got it loaded and strapped down. As I pulled out of the Skate-A-Palooza parking lot for the last time, Jacques gave me a salute. "Give 'em hell, kid," he yelled after me. The drive home was a white-knuckle affair. Every bump in the road made the trailer sway, and I had visions of the Zamboni breaking free and careening into oncoming traffic, causing a pile-up that would make the evening news. But I made it. I backed the behemoth into my driveway just after dark, the whole rig taking up my entire driveway and half the lawn. I threw a giant silver tarp over it, where it sat looking like a beached whale. My work had only just begun. The next morning, I made a phone call that would change everything. I knew I was out of my depth. I can build a bookshelf,
50%.
I can change my own oil, but I cannot fabricate custom snow-moving attachments for
One
an
face near
industrial
bottom
ice
edge.
machine. For that, I needed a professional, or at least a guy with a welder and a questionable sense of judgment. I found him in the local business listings under Gus's Farm and Fleet Repair. The ad just said, "If it has an engine and it's broke, I can fix it. No computers." I dialed the number. A gruff voice answered on the second ring. Gus's. Hi, my name's Frank, I began, trying to sound normal. I was hoping to get a quote on some custom fabrication work. What's the machine? He grunted. Well, it's an Olympia ice resurfacer. There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could hear the faint sound of a wrench clattering to the floor. A what? An ice resurfacer. You know, a Zamboni. You building a rink in your backyard, son? Gus asked, his voice a mixture of confusion and curiosity. Nope, I said, deciding to just go for it. I'm weaponizing it against my HOA. The silence this time was even longer. I thought he might have hung up. Then a deep rumbling sound started. It grew into a chuckle, then a full-throated, hearty laugh. It was the sound of a man who appreciated pure, unadulterated absurdity. My shop opens at 7 tomorrow morning, Gus finally said, still laughing. Bring coffee and a damn good story. Gus's workshop was a cathedral of chaos. It was a massive pole barn filled with tractors in various states of disassembly, ancient-looking lathes, and piles of scrap metal that looked like they had been there since the Truman administration. Gus himself was exactly as I'd pictured. A big man in his late 60s with a magnificent gray beard, grease-stained overalls, and hands the size of dinner plates. I told him the whole story. The laminated notice, Brenda, the mailbox. He listened patiently, sipping the coffee I brought, a slow grin spreading across his face. So you want to turn this ice shaver into a snow eater, he said when I was done. Essentially, yes. I love it, he declared, slapping his knee. It's the stupidest, most beautiful thing I've ever heard. Let's get that beast over here. What followed was the greatest montage of my life. For the next 3 weeks, I spent every spare moment at Gus's shop. He was a mechanical savant, a wizard of welding. We were no longer just fixing the Zamboni. We were upgrading it. We were transforming it. First, the primary weapon. Gus sourced a massive industrial-grade snowblower attachment from a defunct airport runway clearer. He spent days fabricating a custom mounting bracket and a hydraulic power takeoff to run it directly from the Olympia's engine. It looked ridiculously oversized, like a bulldog with a great white shark's jaw. Next, the accessories. We installed a bank of blindingly bright LED floodlights on a roof rack. For nighttime operations, Gus said with a wink. He convinced me to add an ear-splittingly loud air horn, salvaged from a semi-truck. For safety, he claimed, though his gleeful expression suggested it was for annoyance. The final touch was the paint job. I wanted it to look intimidating. We settled on classic flame decals licking up the sides of the machine. And on the hood, in bold, white, military-style stencil font, Gus painted its new name, The Compliance. By the time we were done, it was a masterpiece of malicious engineering. It was no longer just a Zamboni. It was a statement. Getting it back to my house was another adventure, but this time it felt triumphant. I parked it in the driveway, the tarp barely concealing its monstrous new form. The neighborhood was buzzing. People would slow down as they drove by, trying to figure out what alien spacecraft had landed in my driveway.
Pause recording.
My neighbor
Take
Dave,
picture.
a
Button.
chill, bearded software engineer who had his own share of run-ins with Brenda, finally came over one afternoon. Dude, he said, I gotta ask, what is under the tarp? Without a word, I pulled back a corner
One
of
face
the tarp,
near bottom edge.
revealing the snowblower, the floodlights, and the word compliance. Dave's eyes went wide. He stared for a solid minute, his brain processing the sheer audacity of it all. Then, he slowly broke into a grin that stretched from ear to ear. He looked at me, then back at the machine, and just started laughing. "Oh, this is beautiful," he said, shaking his head in disbelief. "This is the most beautiful thing I have ever seen. Whatever you're planning, Frank, I'm in. Let me know if you need a co-pilot." I had my machine. I had my mechanic. And now I had my first ally. All we needed now was snow. The last week of November was a tense waiting game. I checked the weather forecast with the obsessive focus of a general planning an invasion. Every day was sunny and unseasonably warm. I tinkered with the compliance in the driveway, starting it up just to hear the satisfying roar of its propane engine, making sure the hydraulics were sound. The air horn, I discovered, was loud enough to rattle the windows of my own house. Sarah made me promise to use it only in emergencies. We had very different definitions of emergency. On the evening of November 30th, the day before the HOA parking ban officially began, Brenda sent out a neighborhood-wide email. It was a masterpiece of passive-aggressive glee. Subject: Important reminder. Dear Oak Haven residents, this is a friendly reminder that Winter Bylaw 11B4 goes into effect tomorrow, December 1st. As per the rules, all vehicles must be removed from the street by 9 p.m. tonight and must remain off the street until March 31st. Let's all do our part to keep our community beautiful and accessible. Your cooperation is appreciated. Sincerely, Brenda, HOA President. You can just feel the smugness radiating off the screen, I grumbled, reading it over Sarah's shoulder. Just ignore her, Sarah said. Are you sure this is going to work, Frank? This whole thing is insane. Insanity is doing the same thing over and over and expecting a different result, I said sagely. I, on the other hand, am introducing a new, very large variable into the equation. Then, that night, it happened. The local news meteorologist, with the barely contained excitement they only get for big weather events, announced the first major snowstorm of the season. A winter weather advisory was in effect. 6 to 8 inches were expected overnight. I felt a thrill shoot through me. It was showtime. I couldn't sleep. I was like a kid on Christmas Eve, if Santa was planning to deliver a blizzard and a chance to stick it to the man. I sat in the dark living room, peering through the blinds. Around 2 a.m., the first fat, wet flakes began to fall, swirling in the orange glow of the streetlights. By 4 a.m., the world outside was covered in a pristine, silent blanket of white, at least 6 inches.
One face near left edge.
The neighborhood was asleep. The city plows hadn't come through yet. It was perfect. I slipped out of bed, put on my warm
Face center. 33 minutes. Face centered.
Gloves, and went to the garage. I grabbed a travel mug of coffee, took a deep breath, and stepped out into the freezing air. The compliance sat waiting under its tarp, a silent monster. I pulled the tarp off, the heavy, snow-covered plastic sliding to the ground with a soft whoosh. The startup sequence was a thing of beauty. I turned the key. The engine coughed once, twice, then roared to life with a throaty rumble that seemed to shake the very ground beneath my feet. I flipped a switch, and the hydraulic systems whined as they came online. I flicked another, and the bank of LED floodlights bathed the entire front of my house and the street in brilliant daylight white light. I put the machine in gear and rumbled down the gentle slope of my driveway. The chains on the tires crunched satisfyingly on the compacted snow. When I reached the street, I lowered the massive snowblower at the front, its steel auger glinting under the lights. I took a sip of coffee, engaged the blower, and pushed forward. The result was instantaneous and glorious. The machine didn't just move the snow, it obliterated it. A massive plume of fine powder erupted from the chute, which I had aimed directly at the center of my front lawn. The sound was incredible. The deep roar of the engine, the high-pitched scream of the auger, and the thunderous blast of the snow hitting the ground. It was loud, it was violent, and it was absurdly, comically effective. I made 2 slow, careful passes. In less than 10 minutes, I had cleared a perfect 20-foot by 8-foot rectangle of asphalt in front of my house. It was a pristine black void in a world of white. The pavement was so clean you could eat off it. I raised the blower, backed the compliance neatly into my driveway, and shut it down. The sudden silence was almost as jarring as the noise had been. Then, with a feeling of immense satisfaction, I got into my F-150, which had been waiting patiently in the driveway behind the Zamboni, and parked it directly in the center of the beautifully cleared spot. It fit perfectly. Legally, it was on the street, but it was sitting on dry, bare pavement, posing no threat to any snowplow.
One face near bottom left video resolution, HD,
I had
button.
followed the letter of the law, if not the spirit. I went back inside, poured another cup of coffee, and sat by the window to watch the sun rise. As dawn broke, the neighborhood began to stir.
Near top left edge.
First to notice was Dave from next door. He came out onto his porch in a bathrobe, holding a mug. He saw my truck. Then his eyes followed the perfectly cleared path to the monster sitting in my driveway. He froze. He looked back at the truck, then at my house. He caught my eye through the window, and a slow, respectful clap began. He raised his mug to me in a silent toast. A few minutes later, I saw a flicker of movement in Brenda's window across the street. Her curtains twitched, then were pulled back sharply. I couldn't see her expression, but I could feel the waves of pure, unadulterated fury emanating from her house. It took her less than 4 hours. By noon, tucked neatly under my windshield wiper, was the first official notice of violation. It was, of course, laminated. Violation: unauthorized operation of industrial machinery on a public thoroughfare. Fine: $75. I chuckled. I had been waiting for this. I went to my office, where I had already printed out the relevant city ordinances. I highlighted Section 8C, which detailed the types of vehicles legally permitted to operate on city streets. It included, among cars, trucks, and motorcycles, a wonderful little catch-all phrase, and other specialized utility vehicles. I also highlighted the section on property damage, noting that no property, public or private, had been damaged in any way. I typed up a polite, formal appeal letter, attached copies of the ordinances, and sealed it in an envelope. I walked across the street, slipped it into Brenda's mailbox, and raised the little red flag. The first shot had been fired. I had returned fire with meticulously researched paperwork. This was war. The next 3 months were a blur of snow, fines, and formal appeals. It became a rhythm, a bizarre winter dance between Brenda's bureaucratic rage and my malicious compliance. Every time it snowed, no matter the time, I'd fire up the compliance and clear my spot. And every time, like clockwork, a new laminated violation would appear on my truck. But Brenda was getting creative. She had moved past the industrial machinery argument after my first appeal. The second fine was for a noise violation before 7 a.m. I was ready, I sent them a copy of City Code 11-4B, which explicitly stated that snow removal equipment was exempt from municipal noise ordinances. In my appeal letter, I politely argued that while the compliance's primary function in a former life was ice resurfacing, its current modified form was unquestionably that of snow removal equipment. Checkmate. The third fine was even more desperate. Improper storage of a commercial vehicle on residential property. This one almost had me, until I remembered the paperwork from the DMV. When I'd registered it, the clerk had been utterly baffled. There was no category for personal Zamboni. After a long and confusing conversation with her supervisor, they had registered it as a specialty recreational vehicle, the same category as an RV or a dune buggy. I sent Brenda a copy of the official registration, along with a cheerful note. Check and mate. My neighbor Dave became my official co-conspirator. He'd come over after every operation for a debrief, which we called our strategy sessions. "Dude, that was a masterpiece last night," he said one morning, leaning on the fence that separated our yards. "The way you banked the snow into that perfect pyramid on your lawn? Art, pure art, and thanks," I said. "But I feel like it's missing something. It needs more psychological impact." "You need music," Dave said, his eyes lighting up. "Like in the movies. When the helicopter gunships come in during Apocalypse Now, they're blasting Wagner. You need a theme song." He was a genius. The next day, I installed a waterproof, high-volume Bluetooth speaker in the cab of the Compliance. That night, during the next snowfall, the neighborhood was treated to the glorious sound of my machine clearing the street to the thundering orchestral score of Vivaldi's Winter from the Four Seasons. It was dramatic, it was classy, and it was deeply, deeply annoying to Brenda. The neighborhood was now officially a community divided. There was the Frank Chion, my silent supporters, who would give me a thumbs up as they drove by, or leave anonymous six-packs of beer on my doorstep. They saw me as a folk hero, a man fighting back against the tyranny of the HOO. Then there was the Brenda Gade, a small but vocal minority of her cronies, who would glare at me from their windows and post furious, grammatically challenged rants on the official Oak Haven Estates Facebook group. The Facebook group became the digital front of our war. Brenda H. Does anyone else feel unsafe with that? That thing being operated in the middle of the night? It's a menace. What if a child runs out in front of it? Dave M., my Dave. At 3 a.m., Brenda, on a Tuesday? Are the children sleep plowing now? Frank's machine has more lights than the Vegas Strip. You can see it from space. It's probably the safest vehicle in the neighborhood. Margaret T., the treasurer. It's an eyesore. He's turning our beautiful neighborhood into a circus. And the noise. Frank M., me. Hi, Margaret. Just wanted to clarify that the Compliance is fully compliant with all city noise ordinances for snow removal equipment. See Bylaw 11-4B. As for its appearance, I believe the flame decals add a certain sporty flair. Have a great day. My greatest triumph of the winter, however, came in late January. Brenda, realizing her fines were being successfully appealed, tried a new tactic. She had the HOA's lawyer, a man who looked exactly as slimy as you'd imagine, draft a cease and desist letter. It was full of threatening legal jargon about creating a public nuisance and willful disregard for community standards. It demanded I immediately cease all operations of the aforementioned ice grooming apparatus. This was her big gun. But she made a fatal error. She sent it via certified mail. I had to sign for it. The next time it snowed, I did something different. I cleared my spot as usual, blasting my classical music. But I also cleared the sidewalk in front of my house. And Dave's house. Then I kept going. I cleared the sidewalk for 3 houses down in each direction. I even cleared the little cul-de-sac at the end of our street. It took me over an hour, but by the time I was done, a huge portion of our block had perfectly clear, safe sidewalks. Then I wrote my response to the lawyer. Dear Mr. Slimington, thank you for your letter. While I dispute its claims, please be advised that as of 5:15 a.m. this morning, I have expanded my snow removal activities to include public sidewalks, thereby actively reducing public nuisance and improving community safety, especially for our elderly residents and children walking to the bus stop. My actions are, therefore, a community service. Furthermore, my vehicle, the Compliance, is equipped with a rotating amber safety beacon, which I purchased and installed to ensure maximum visibility in the spirit of proactive community safety. Sincerely, Frank Miller, a concerned and helpful resident. The amber beacon was Dave's idea. We'd installed it the previous weekend. It sat on the roof and pulsed with an official-looking glow, making the Compliance look less like a personal project and more like a municipal vehicle. Brenda had no response. She couldn't very well punish me for clearing the sidewalks for our elderly neighbors. Her public nuisance argument was in tatters. She had escalated, and I had re-escalated with weaponized helpfulness. The winter wore on, the snow kept falling, and the Compliance kept roaring to life, a testament to the fact that with enough creativity, you can fight City Hall, or at least your HOA, and win. The war was far from over, but I was winning every battle. The only question was what desperate final move Brenda had left. February blew in with a vengeance, bringing with it the kind of blizzard that old-timers talk about for years. The news called it a snowpocalypse. The governor declared a state of emergency. Over a foot of heavy, wet snow was dumped on us in less than 12 hours, and the wind whipped it into massive drifts. It was the perfect storm. For me, it was the championship game. For Brenda, it was her last stand. I knew she would do something drastic. Her usual weapons, laminated notices, passive-aggressive emails, a slimy lawyer, were useless against me. She had one last move, the nuclear option for all neighborhood disputes, calling the cops. The storm raged all night. Around 5 a.m., when the snow finally tapered off, I suited up and went out to face the beast. The world was buried. My driveway was a solid white ramp leading to a street that had vanished under 2-foot drifts. This was a job that would have broken a lesser man's snowblower. But the Compliance was built for this. I fired her up, the engine sounding even louder in the muffled post-blizzard silence. The amber beacon sliced through the pre-dawn gloom. I lowered the giant auger and went to work. It was a battle. The snow was so heavy that I had to take it in small bites, the engine groaning under the strain. But slowly, steadily, I carved out my rectangle of freedom from the frozen chaos. It took longer than usual, a full half hour of roaring, grinding, snow-blasting effort. But the result was even more dramatic than usual. My parking spot was a perfect black oasis in a desert of white. I parked my truck, feeling a deep sense of primal victory. I was just pouring my coffee in the kitchen when I saw them. The flashing red and blue lights, painting streaks across my living room wall. 2 police cruisers were sliding to a stop in the deep snow in front of my house. This was it, the main event. I saw Brenda across the street, standing on her porch in a full-length parka, her face a mask of grim triumph. She was pointing dramatically towards my house, a caricature of a tattletale. I took a calm sip of my coffee, grabbed the binder I'd prepared for this exact occasion, and walked outside, Two officers got out of their cars. One was young, with a serious, chiseled jaw, and the earnest expression of a man who still believed he could make a difference. This was the rookie, Officer Rodriguez. The other was older, with a graying mustache.
Face near top
the
left
weary, seen-it-all eyes of
Face
a man
near
who
top
had
left
responded
edge.
to one too many calls about cats stuck in trees. This was the veteran, Officer Miller.
One face near top right
Morning,
edge.
sir.
Face near top.
Rodriguez
Face
said,
near top
his
left edge.
voice
Face
all
near
business.
50 minutes.
We've had a
18
complaint.
seconds.
He gestured vaguely at my
Near
truck,
top right edge.
then at the compliance sitting in my driveway. A complaint about this whole situation. Good morning, officers, I said calmly. It's my snow remover.
50
It's my
minutes.
spot
36 seconds.
Her HOA
YouTube.
regulations,
Now,
you
Rick.
understand.
Steely Dan. Live at Pine Knob
Emboldened
Music
by the
Theater.
presence of law
Clarkston.
enforcement,
MI.
marched across the street,
2003.
her boots
60 frames
crunching
per
in the snow.
second. Attachment.
He's a
50
menace,
minutes.
officer,
37
she shrieked,
seconds.
her voice shrill in the cold air.
50 minutes.
He's
53
operating
seconds. 50
that
minutes.
death machine in the
55
middle of the
seconds.
night. It's unregistered, it's unsafe, and he's terrorizing the neighborhood. I didn't even look at her. I just opened my binder and handed it to Officer Miller. Everything you need should be in there, sir, I said politely. HOA bylaw in question is on the first tab. City noise and vehicle ordinances are on the second. The vehicle's official DMV registration is on the third. Miller took the binder, a flicker of amusement in his eyes. Rodriguez looked back and forth between me and Brenda, trying to maintain a serious expression. Miller flipped through the pages, his eyebrows rising. He stopped on the DMV registration page. Specialty recreational vehicle? He muttered, then looked up at the flame-decaled monster in my driveway. A small smile tugged at the corner of his mustache. So, let me get this straight, Miller said, looking at me. He was no longer trying to hide his amusement. The Homeowners Association told you that you couldn't park on the street.
60448.
Well, let me just say that on there, the guy said shoveling is for peasants. And I had to laugh because I most certainly agree with him.
No. That's correct, officer, I said. So you bought a Zamboni, attached a giant snowblower
One
to it,
face centered.
and made sure there's no snow. Ever. In this one specific spot. That's the long and short of it, I confirmed. An act of what you might call aggressive compliance. Brenda sputtered. It's not compliant. It's a loophole. He's mocking the rules. Miller closed the binder with a soft snap and handed it back to me. He turned to face Brenda, his expression becoming professional again, but his eyes were still dancing. Ma'am, he said, his voice patient but firm. I understand your frustration, but from what I can see here, this man hasn't actually broken any laws. What? Brenda shrieked. His vehicle is legally registered with the state, Miller continued, ticking the points off on his fingers. He's operating it on a public street for the purpose of snow removal, which is permitted. He's not damaging any city or private property. And according to these ordinances he's provided, which, by the way, are correct, he's not in violation of any noise laws. He sighed and looked from Brenda to me, and then to the Zamboni. Frankly, ma'am, this is a civil matter between you and him and your HOA. It's not a police matter. We can't do anything here. The color drained from Brenda's face. This was not how this was supposed to go. The cavalry wasn't supposed to congratulate the dragon. Miller turned to me. He stepped closer and lowered his voice, so only I could hear. Between you and me, he said, gesturing with his chin towards the compliance. That is the most beautiful, glorious thing I have ever seen in 20 years on the force. He gave me a subtle wink, then turned and walked back to his cruiser. Have a good day, sir. Rodriguez, looking utterly bewildered, just nodded at me and followed his partner. They got in their cars and drove away, their lights vanishing down the street. I was left alone in the snow with Brenda. She stood there, utterly defeated, her mouth opening and closing like a fish. Her ultimate weapon had been a dud. Her authority was gone, vanished into the cold morning air. Without another word, she turned and trudged back to her house, a lonely, vanquished queen. I stood there for a long moment, the quiet hum of my truck's engine the only sound. The war was over. I had won. Brenda's defeat on that snowy morning was absolute and very, very public. In a small suburban neighborhood, news travels fast. The story of the police showing up, siding with me, and leaving her standing alone in a snowdrift became an instant legend. Officer Miller's most beautiful thing I've ever seen, quote, got repeated and embellished until it sounded like the mayor himself was going to give me a key to the city. Brenda's reign of terror was over. Her authority, built on a foundation of petty rules and intimidation, had crumbled under the weight of a 7,000-pound ice machine. The effect was immediate. At the very next HOA meeting, something unprecedented happened. People actually showed up. The sad little multi-purpose room was packed. Emboldened by my victory, the Frank Tian had come out in force. Dave was there, along with a dozen other neighbors I'd only ever waved to. When Brenda tried to call the meeting to order, she was shouted down. A motion was put forth for a vote of no confidence in her presidency. It passed, 28-3. Margaret and Tom were her only supporters. A new board was elected on the spot, with Dave, my co-conspirator, reluctantly accepting the role of president. Their first order of business? They held an emergency vote to repeal Winter Bylaw 11B-4. It was replaced with a single, common-sense sentence. Please avoid on-street parking during active snowstorms to assist city plows. It was beautiful.
519-350-4099.
Oh dear. Yeah. Well, I think that might be the end of the story. I don't know if I want to do another story or not. This looks pretty good.
A few weeks later, the grimy snow melted away, revealing the green shoots of crocuses and the muzzle, squashed beer cans that had been hidden since New Year's. The great winter war of Oak Haven Estates was officially over. I retired the Compliance for the season. I gave it a good wash, changed the oil, and parked it in the driveway under its silver tarp, where it stood not as a vehicle, but as a monument to victory. A monument with flame decals. One warm evening, Sarah and I were sitting on the front porch, sipping beers and watching the sun set. My truck was parked in its rightful place on the street, and it would stay there all year long, unbothered and unfined. Sarah looked over at the hulking, tarp-covered shape in the driveway. "You know," she said with a smile, "you could have just cleaned out the garage." "I know," I said, taking a long, satisfying sip of my beer. "But where's the fun in that?" I looked at my truck, then at the quiet, peaceful street. I had fought the law, the stupid, petty HOA law, and I had won. And I'd done it with a propane engine, a whole lot of noise, and a ridiculous amount of malicious compliance. It was, without a doubt, the most satisfying thing I had ever done.
Okay. So I think that is going to be where we leave it.
The dial tone was the most aggressive sound I had
Maybe
ever
not.
heard.
I'll give
It wasn't
a
just
I'll
a
give it another
sound.
shot.
It was
Let's
a
see where we're
statement.
at here.
It was a crisp, electronic settlement
Pause recording.
communication
59
that said,
minutes.
Nice.
"Our
39
conversation is
seconds.
over because I have deemed it so, and your opinion is worth less than the lint in my pocket." I stood in my kitchen, the phone still pressed to my ear, listening to the monotonous beep, beep, beep of utter dismissal. My blood was doing a slow, simmering boil. "Have a blessed day," she'd said, right before slamming the metaphorical door in my face. The sheer, weaponized pleasantry of it was breathtaking. It was the kind of parting shot a medieval queen might give before motioning for the royal executioner. I lowered the phone and stared out the window. The sky had been a sickly, bruised gray all afternoon, and now it was making good on its threat. Snowflakes, fat and heavy as wet cotton balls, were beginning to plaster themselves to the glass. This wasn't a gentle, picturesque dusting. This was the opening salvo of a meteorological siege. This was Snowpocalypse 2025, as the gleeful TV weather people had been calling it for the past 48 hours. And I, Alex, a 30-something project manager who prided himself on logic and efficiency, had just been excommunicated by the high priestess of Serenity Meadows Estate, Carol Peterson. The whole thing had started, as most modern disasters do, with an email. It had arrived an hour earlier, its subject line glowing with all the subtlety of a nuclear launch warning. Urgent. Official HOA directive regarding inclement weather. Serenity Meadows Estates. Even the title was classic Carol. Not a notice or an update. A directive. As if it had been handed down from on high, etched onto a stone tablet. I imagined her writing it in a dark room, illuminated only by a single bare bulb cackling as she typed. I had read it, my brow furrowing deeper with each line of corporate speak legalese. It was a masterpiece of the genre, a dense tapestry of passive aggression and bureaucratic nonsense. To all residents of Serenity Meadows Estates, it began, already setting a chilly, impersonal tone. In light of the severe weather forecast issued by the National Weather Service, and in the interest of preserving the integrity and value of our community's shared assets, the HOA Board has unanimously voted to enact Emergency Protocol 7C. This protocol dictates that the main vehicular entrance gate will be secured and locked promptly at 8 p.m. this evening, Tuesday, January 21st. I'd paused there, rereading the sentence. Locked? We were expecting 2 feet of snow. Locking the only way in or out seemed counterintuitive. But there was a reason. Of course, there was a reason. This measure is necessary to prevent irreparable damage to the decorative stamped concrete entranceway and the delicate electronic gate mechanism. The harsh de-icing chemicals and heavy machinery associated with unauthorized third-party snow removal vendors represent a significant threat to our infrastructure. Please be assured that our community's designated and fully vetted contractor, Frosty's Friends Snow Removal, has been placed on notice and will service the entirety of Serenity Meadows in due course, following their standard operational timeline. Frosty's Friends. I snorted. Frosty was a 70-year-old man named Stan with a 1998 Ford Ranger and a rusty plow attachment. The last time it snowed 6 inches, in due course, meant my street wasn't touched for 2 days. Stan's standard operational timeline seemed to be based on the migratory patterns of geese. The problem was, most of us in the neighborhood weren't idiots. We knew Frosty's Friends was a joke, a low-bid contract Carol had secured because Stan was her second cousin, or something equally nepotistic. So, about half the subdivision, myself included, had a seasonal contract with a real professional outfit. Avalanche Annihilators. The name was a bit much, but their work was impeccable. They operated a fleet of brand new trucks, and their motto was, "Cleared before your coffee's brewed." And Carol, in her infinite wisdom, was about to lock them out. That's when the stakes crystallized for me. My girlfriend, Sarah, was a registered nurse. She was finishing a double shift at the hospital and was due to go back in at 7 a.m. tomorrow. People's lives, actual human lives, depended on her being able to get to work. Her getting snowed in wasn't just an inconvenience. It was a genuine problem. I pulled out my phone and texted my next-door neighbor, Dave. He'd lived here for 20 years and was my resident expert on the local HOA insanity. Me. You see Carol's latest email? Is she serious? The reply came back almost instantly. Dave, has a heart attack. She tried this back in 18. Called it Operation Snowflake Shield. It was a disaster. Old man Hemlock slipped on his icy porch and broke his hip waiting for the ambulance that couldn't get through the unplowed streets. Took them an extra 20 minutes to get to him. She doesn't care. To her, the rule is the point. My stomach tightened. This wasn't just stupid. It was dangerous. And that's when I decided to be an adult. I'd decided to call her. Okay, Alex, I'd told myself, pacing my kitchen floor. Deep breaths. You're a project manager. You handle difficult stakeholders. She's just a stakeholder who's running on a potent cocktail of cheap Chardonnay and absolute power. You can do this. Be the calm, reasonable new guy. That had been my fatal flaw. I had assumed I was dealing with a rational human being. The memory of the phone call was still seared into my brain. I'd been polite, introducing myself, referencing the email, the directive, and explaining the situation calmly. I'd mentioned that many residents relied on a private service to get to their essential jobs. I'd even played the hero card, mentioning Sarah and the hospital. Her response had been a monotone recitation of HOA scripture. That is an unfortunate personal situation, but it does not supersede community bylaws, she'd said, her voice like grinding gravel. As per Bylaw 7, Section 4, Subsection B, all communal road maintenance must be performed by board-approved contractors. With all due respect, Carol, I'd pressed, my calm facade starting to crack. Your approved contractor couldn't plow a sandbox with a spoon. This is a public safety issue. What if someone needs an ambulance? The fire department and emergency services have a master code for the electronic lock, she'd retorted, as if that solved everything. The protocol is designed to prevent the riffraff. The riffraff. She meant the competent, well-equipped professionals we paid good money for. She meant Big Mike and his avalanche annihilators. And then had come the final, devastating blow. The have a blessed day, followed by the click and the deafening dial tone. So there I stood, in my kitchen, the snow coming down harder now, the world outside turning a blurry, ominous white. The diplomatic approach had failed. The reasonable new guy had been summarily executed. Fine. The war had just been declared. And if Carol thought a locked gate and a few lines in a binder were going to stop me, she had no idea who she was dealing with. My project manager brain, the part of me that lived for Gantt charts and risk mitigation, started to whir. Every problem had a solution. Every system had a vulnerability. And every petty tyrant had an ego, which was usually their biggest weakness. No more Mr. Reasonable New Guy. It was time to find a loophole. Defeated in single combat, I turned to the next logical arena for modern warfare. The neighborhood Facebook group. The Serenity Meadows Neighbors page was usually a sleepy corner of the internet, populated by posts about lost cats, recommendations for plumbers, and passive-aggressive complaints about people not picking up after their dogs. Tonight, it was about to become a war room. I spent a full 10 minutes composing my post. It needed to be the perfect blend of concerned neighbor and righteous indignation, without tipping over into the kind of frantic ranting that would get me dismissed as a crank. I chose a picture of the worsening snowstorm outside my window for dramatic effect. Hi, neighbors, I typed. Alex here from 112 Juniper Lane. Hope everyone is staying safe and warm. I wanted to open a discussion about the HOA directive to lock the main gate at 8 p.m. I'm sure we all appreciate the board's desire to protect our shared infrastructure, but I'm concerned this could have some serious unintended consequences. I laid it all out. The unreliability of Frosty's friends, the fact that many of us had prepaid for private services, and the critical need for residents, especially those with essential jobs like doctors, nurses, and first responders, to be able to get out in the morning. I finished with a call for unity. Perhaps we can find a compromise that keeps everyone safe and ensures our roads are cleared efficiently. I'm sure if we put our heads together, we can work with the board to find a solution. Looking forward to hearing your thoughts. I hit post and leaned back, cracking my knuckles. It was polite, it was reasonable. It was a digital olive branch. It was promptly set on fire. The first comment appeared in under 30 seconds. It was from a woman named Sharon Hill. "Thank you for saying something, Alex. My husband is a pilot and is on call. This is completely unacceptable." Then another. "I remember the Hemlock incident in 18. This is dangerously irresponsible. I'm with Alex." A wave of support washed over the post. People shared their own stories. A diabetic neighbor worried about getting to a dialysis appointment. A young mother with a baby who was terrified of being trapped. For a moment, I felt a swell of pride. Community in action, the little people standing up to the powers that be. And then the loyalists arrived. The sycophants. Carol's Praetorian Guard. The first shot was fired by a woman named Brenda from down the street, whose profile picture was a blurry photo of a garden gnome. "Carol is just trying to protect our property values, which some of you seem to take for granted. The rules are the rules for a reason. Maybe you should have read the bylaws before you bought your house." Another chimed in. "I trust the board's judgment. Frosty's Friends has always done a fine job for me. Some people are just entitled." The comment section devolved into a digital civil war. Accusations flew, insults were hurled. The Hemlock incident was relitigated. Brenda accused Sharon's pilot husband of causing noise pollution. It was chaos. For about 15 glorious, anarchic minutes, the residents of Serenity Meadows aired every grievance they'd ever had. And then the hammer fell. A new comment appeared, and the page fell silent. It was from the Queen herself, Carol Peterson. Her profile picture was a stern, tightly cropped headshot that looked like it had been taken at the DMV. "This matter is now closed," she wrote, her words radiating an icy finality. "The safety and preservation of our community's valuable infrastructure is my top priority, a responsibility I take with the utmost seriousness. This public forum is not the appropriate venue for debating official and binding HOA policy. The board's decision, which was reached after careful consideration, is final. Further public dissent on this platform will be noted. The gate will be locked at 8 p.m. sharp. And then, the master stroke." Below her comment, a small gray line appeared. "Carol Peterson has turned off commenting for this post. The digital guillotine." She had swooped in, had the last word, and silenced everyone. The sheer audacity was stunning. Further dissent will be noted. What was she going to do? Give me a demerit? Send me to my room with no supper? I stared at the screen, my hands clenched into fists on my desk. My laptop was lucky I didn't hurl it through the drywall. That was it. That was the moment my entire mindset shifted. I was no longer a concerned neighbor seeking compromise. I was a prisoner of war planning a jailbreak. My respect for the rules had been met with tyranny, and my attempt at diplomacy had been squashed with a digital jackboot. Fine. If Carol wanted to play by the book, I'd find a chapter she'd never even read. My anger, hot and useless, began to cool and solidify into something else. Focus. The project manager in me took over, shoving the indignant homeowner aside. Every complex system has a workaround, every fortress has a forgotten back door. I wasn't just dealing with a person anymore. I was dealing with a flawed system, and I knew how to deal with those. I minimized the Facebook tab and pulled up the digital plot map of the subdivision that had been buried in the mountain of paperwork I'd received when I bought the house. It was a boring technical PDF showing property lines, utility easements, and topographical data. I zoomed in on the main entrance, a choke point controlled by one electronic gate. A single point of failure. It was a terrible design. My eyes traced the perimeter of the subdivision. The main road, Serenity Lane, snaked through the development. Houses, cul-de-sacs, a small parquet with a sad-looking gazebo. And then I saw it. On the far northeast corner of the property, mostly obscured by a green-tinted area labeled Natural Preserve, was a thin, dashed line. It was labeled Utility and Emergency Access Road. My heart gave a little thump. The dashed line connected the back of a cul-de-sac on Celestial Court to a small, unassuming side street called Mill Road, a street that was entirely outside of Carroll's jurisdiction. It was a relic, likely used for construction vehicles when they first built the neighborhood 25 years ago, and then forgotten by all but the city planners. But it was there on the map. It was an official access point. It was our way out. I threw on my heaviest coat, pulled on my snow boots, and told Sarah I was going for a walk. She gave me a look that said, "In this weather? Are you insane?" "I'm just checking something," I said, a grim smile on my face. "Call it a site survey." The wind was brutal, driving pellets of snow into my face. The 5-minute walk to Celestial Court felt like an Arctic expedition. I trudged through the rapidly deepening snow, my boots sinking almost to my shins. The world was a swirl of white and gray. The house is already looking like frosted gingerbread creations. At the very end of the cul-de-sac, behind a thicket of snow-laden pine trees, I found it. It wasn't much to look at. A simple, 10-foot-wide chain-link gate, rusty at the hinges. It was stretched between two metal poles set in concrete. It was undeniably old, but it was structurally sound. And holding it closed wasn't some fancy electronic lock or an official HOA-branded device. It was just a thick, greasy-looking length of chain, woven through the fence and secured with a massive, industrial-grade padlock that looked like it belonged on a shipping container. I leaned against the fence, the cold metal biting through my gloves. My breath plumed in the air.
No.
Well, I thought.
Okay, that's fine,
A
honey.
slow,
One
triumphant
face near
movement
left edge.
spreading across my
Centered.
face. What do we have
Near
here?
top edge.
You want help?
Carol was so obsessed
Near
with
top left
polishing the
edge.
ceremonial front door that she'd completely forgotten to lock the service entrance.
Okay,
This was a classic logistics screw-up.
good.
She had secured the primary ingress point, but had left the secondary route completely vulnerable. It was amateur hour. I pulled out my phone, my fingers clumsy with cold, and took a few pictures of the gate, the chain, and the padlock. Then I trudged back home. The wind at my back now, a brilliant, beautiful, and slightly illegal plan blossoming in my mind. Back in the warmth of my house, I poured myself a generous measure of bourbon and sat down at my desk. I pulled up the contact info for Avalanche Annihilators. It was time to call in the cavalry. A man's voice, deep and gravelly like a rock tumbler, answered on the second ring. Avalanche, Mike speaking. Mike, it's Alex Miller from 112 Juniper Lane in Serenity Meadows. We have a situation. There was a weary sigh on the other end of the line. Let me guess. The Dragon Lady is locking the main gate again. I blinked. You know her? A short, bitter laugh crackled through the phone. Buddy, every private guy in a 50-mile radius knows about Queen Carol. We call her the gatekeeper. She's famous. Okay, we're locked out for the night? She's locking the main gate at 8 p.m. sharp, I confirmed. But I think I found a back door, a service entrance on the northeast side of the neighborhood. The only thing blocking it is a chain with a big, ugly padlock. You guys have bolt cutters on your trucks, right? There was a long pause on the other end of the line. I could almost hear the gears turning in his head. Then, a slow, deep chuckle started, building into a full-throated laugh. "Kid, I like the way you think," Big Mike said, his voice full of newfound respect. "I like it a lot. My guys are just finishing up a commercial lot over on the west side. I can pull them off that. And you know what? I know a couple of independent guys, good operators, who are sick to death of her too. They'd probably do this for free just for the story." My grin widened. This was better than I'd hoped. "What if I told you," Mike continued, his voice dropping conspiratorially, "that I could have a fleet of 4 plows, my 2 biggest trucks and 2 of my buddies, sitting at that service entrance at 8:05 p.m.? "I'd say you're about to become a local legend, Mike," I replied.
1 hour,
Heart hammering
20
with
minutes,
excitement.
41 seconds.
All right, then.
YouTube. Now,
Mike
the
declared,
Oreo
his voice
cat.
booming
Red
with
circle.
purpose.
Watch live now.
Operation
Tuesday
Thunderbolt
fluff.
is a go.
Live
Text me
stream.
the
1
location
hour,
of that gate.
20 minutes,
We're gonna liberate
43
Serenity
seconds.
Meadows. I hung up the
1
phone.
hour, 20
The blood
minutes,
been warming my
56
chest,
seconds.
and a
1
feeling
hour,
of pure,
20 minutes,
unadulterated
57
glee washing
seconds.
over me. The game was on. By 7:50 p.m., the world outside was a churning vortex of white. The wind howled around the corners of the house, and the snow was coming down so thick you couldn't see the streetlights. It was perfect. The storm would provide the chaos and cover we needed. I told Sarah the plan. She looked at me, a mixture of horror and amusement in her eyes. "You're going to break into our own neighborhood with a fleet of renegade snowplows?" "It's not breaking in if you live here," I argued. "It's creative problem solving. Think of me as a freedom fighter, but for asphalt." She just shook her head, smiling. "Okay, Che Guevara. Just don't get arrested. I can't bail you out until my shift ends." "Noted." I bundled up, this time adding a ski mask to my ensemble, less for anonymity and more because the wind felt like it was full of tiny needles. For my casual dog walk, I leashed up Buster, my golden retriever, who took one look out the door, gave me a look of profound betrayal, and promptly tried to retreat to his bed. "Come on, boy," I coaxed him. "You're part of the revolution now." He was not impressed. I practically had to drag him down the driveway. We positioned ourselves near the main entrance, hiding behind a large, snow-covered decorative boulder, pretending Buster was intensely interested in a specific patch of buried grass. From our vantage point, we had a clear view of both the gate and Carol's house, number 1 Serenity Lane, situated directly across from the entrance like a guard tower. At 8 p.m. on the dot, as if cued by a Swiss clock, her front door opened. A figure emerged, clad head to toe in a fluorescent yellow parka that screamed, "I am in charge." It was Carol. She marched through the snow with a determined, militaristic gait, a woman on a holy mission. She went to the electronic keypad, punched in a code, and the large wrought iron gates slowly groaned shut, the finality of the sound echoing in the quiet storm. But she wasn't done. Oh no, that would be too simple. From the cavernous pocket of her parka, she produced an object that glinted under the sickly orange glow of the streetlights. It was a padlock. Not just any padlock. It was a comically large, bright red monstrosity, the kind of thing Wile E. Coyote would use to try and lock up the Roadrunner. With great ceremony, she threaded it through the gate's manual override chain and snapped it shut. She gave it a theatrical, two-handed tug to demonstrate its unyielding strength. Even from 50 feet away, through a blizzard, I could feel the smugness radiating off her. I decided to give her the audience she so clearly craved. "Evening, Carol!" I shouted over the wind, stepping out from behind the rock. Buster cowered behind my legs. "Little redundant, isn't it? The electronic lock wasn't enough for you." She visibly startled, squinting into the darkness to identify the source of the voice. "Alex," She spat, her name a curse on the wind. This ensures there is no ambiguity. The directive is now physically enforced. You realize you're trapping people in, right? I yelled back, taking a step closer. What about emergencies? What if someone needs to get out? The fire department has a code for the electronic lock, she recited, her voice a strained shout. This is to prevent the riffraff. She glared at me, the unspoken "you" hanging heavy and frozen in the air between us. I just smiled. A thin, cold smile she probably couldn't see through the swirling snow. Okay, Carol. Just wanted to be clear. I gave a subtle nod. Across the street, a curtain in Dave's living room window twitched. He was my lookout. He flashed his porch light once, all clear. Carol was so focused on me, the designated rebel, and on her precious front gate, that she had no idea what was about to happen. Her trap was set, but she had caught the wrong animal. Come on, Buster, I said, turning my back on her. Let's go home. I walked away at a deliberately calm pace, a man with absolutely nothing to hide. The moment I was out of her sightline, I broke into a dead sprint, Buster bounding gleefully through the deep snow alongside me. We cut through backyards, a gorilla and his four-legged commando, making our way to the rendezvous point. I arrived at the utility access road on Celestial Court at 8:03 p.m., panting and covered in snow. For a second, there was nothing but the sound of the wind. And then I saw them. Through the whiteout, a pair of headlights appeared. Then another, and another, and another. One by one, 4 massive trucks rumbled up the quiet side street and came to a stop. Their diesel engines a low, powerful thrum that was music to my ears. They were beautiful. 3 were heavy-duty pickups with huge plows and salt spreaders, their amber emergency lights strobing in the blizzard. The 4th was a larger, municipal-style dump truck with a plow blade that looked like it could shear the top off a mountain. The door of the lead truck, a Ford F-350 with Avalanche Annihilators emblazoned on the side in aggressive, icy blue letters, swung open. A large figure hopped down. It was Big Mike, a mountain of a man in a Carhartt jacket, his beard already frosted with ice. He was holding the largest pair of bolt cutters I had ever seen. They were at least 4 feet long. He strode towards me, grinning. You bring the problem, he boomed, holding up the cutters like a trophy. I bring the solution. You ready to do this, kid? Born ready, Mike, I said, my own grin feeling like it might freeze to my face. Let's go liberate Serenity Meadows. He didn't need any more encouragement. He marched to the rusty gate, positioned the jaws of the cutters around the thickest part of the chain, and clamped down. For a second, there was only the sound of creaking metal. Mike grunted, putting his whole body into it. Then, with a single, deafening snip, the chain link gave way. The broken ends clattered uselessly against the fence post. The gate was open. Mike turned to me, his eyes twinkling in the flashing lights. He gestured grandly toward the now unblocked road. It had been, maybe 2 minutes since Carol locked the main gate. And here I was. I stood aside, made a sweeping after-you gesture with my arm, and led in a fleet of plows. Mike jumped back in his truck and keyed his radio, his voice crackling with static and glee. All right, boys, the Eagle has landed. We are green-lit. Let's go make some money and tick off a tyrant. One by one, the 4 horsemen of the snow-pocalypse roared past me, their tires churning, and descended into the snow-choked streets of my neighborhood. Operation Thunderplow had begun. The symphony started immediately. It was a glorious, roaring concert of diesel engines, scraping steel, and the rhythmic beeping of trucks in reverse. Big Mike and his crew weren't just plowing. They were executing a coordinated assault. They moved with the kind of military precision that would have made a 5-star general weep with joy. They split up. The 2 larger pickups took the main artery, Serenity Lane, one clearing the right side, the other the left, moving in perfect echelon formation. The dump truck, the behemoth of the fleet, tackled the wide intersection near the entrance. The 3rd pickup, a nimble-looking Dodge Ram, started on the cul-de-sacs, darting in, clearing them with a few deft passes, and darting back out. Huge arcs of snow, brilliantly illuminated by the flashing strobe lights, were flung into the air,
1 hour,
landing in
30 minutes,
uniform
12
piles on the
seconds.
lawn.
YouTube. Now,
This
rock
wasn't
history
the
music.
sloppy,
Will
haphazard
Triumph
work of
continue
Frosty's
after the
friends.
reunion tour?
This
We
was
ask Rick
art.
Emmett. Attachment.
This was the
1
most
hour,
beautiful
30
thing I'd
minutes,
ever seen.
13 seconds.
It was like watching the Blue Angels.
1 hour,
but for
30 minutes,
disgruntled
27
suburbanites.
seconds.
Every scrape of those heavy plows on the asphalt was a tiny, screeching victory for common sense. I stood there for a long moment, just watching them work, a feeling of deep, profound satisfaction warming me more than my insulated coat. Then, I started the walk home, taking the freshly cleared path down the middle of the street like a returning king. The noise, of course, did not go unnoticed. As the dump truck began clearing the road in front of Carol's house, her porch light flicked on. The silhouette of a figure in a fluorescent yellow parka appeared behind the storm door. She stood there for a second, a frozen statue of disbelief. Then the door was flung open. She came out onto the porch, pointing. She was screaming, her mouth opening and closing, but the sound was completely swallowed by the roar of the Cummins engine and the grinding of the plow blade. It was like watching a silent movie. A very, very angry silent movie. She waved her arms frantically, but the driver, a large man in a beanie, gave her a cheerful little wave and continued his work, expertly piling a mountain of snow near the edge of her perfectly manicured lawn. Seeing that her shrieks were useless, Carol retreated back inside. A few seconds later, the lights in her upstairs office window flicked on. I could picture it perfectly. Her fumbling for her phone, her fingers trembling with rage as she dialed 911. I could practically write the transcript of the call myself. There's a gang of hooligans in enormous trucks. They're vandalizing the neighborhood with cleanliness. They're trespassing and providing a contracted service. Send everyone. Send the SWAT team. Send the National Guard. I had just made it back to my driveway when the first set of blue and red lights sliced through the blizzard. A single police cruiser, moving cautiously on the slick roads, pulled into the main cul-de-sac where the plows were now converging to finish the job. Showtime. I sauntered over, hands casually in my pockets, and leaned against the grill of Big Mike's F-350. He killed the engine and hopped out, wiping his hands on a rag. The other drivers did the same. The sudden quiet was almost as jarring as the noise had been. A young officer, looking like he was barely old enough to shave, got out of his car. His name tag read Miller. He had his hand resting on his sidearm, his eyes wide as he took in the scene. 4 massive plow trucks, 4 burly-looking men, and one very calm, smiling guy in a ski mask. I pulled the mask off. Just then, Carol came sprinting, or rather, waddling as fast as she could through the deep snow of the lawn, towards the officer. "Officer! Officer! Thank God!" she shrieked, her voice hoarse. "That's him! He's the ringleader!" She pointed a trembling, mitten-clad finger directly at me. "He cut the HOA lock and let this biker gang in. They're trespassing, vandalism, malicious destruction of property." Officer Miller looked from her hysterical face to my calm one, his expression a perfect mask of confusion. "Sir," he said to me, his voice cautious, "I'm going to need you to explain what's going on here." "Evening, officer," I said, my voice relaxed and friendly. "My name is Alex Miller." This gentleman here is Big Mike, owner of Avalanche Annihilators, a fully licensed and insured snow removal company. I gestured to Mike, who gave a gruff nod. We, along with about 30 other homeowners in this subdivision, have a contract with this company to clear our streets. It's a matter of public safety. Many of our residents are essential workers who need to be able to leave in the morning. He's lying, Carol screeched. They are not authorized. The HOA president, Miss Peterson over there, I continued, my voice overriding hers, decided to physically lock the one and only entrance to the neighborhood, trapping all 200 residents inside during a state-declared weather emergency. She created a massive public safety hazard. It's not illegal, it's in the bylaws. Show him the bylaws. Carol was practically dancing with rage. Officer Miller looked like his brain was about to short-circuit. He was a kid caught between a screaming woman quoting arcane rules and a calm guy talking about public safety. He was clearly out of his depth. And then Salvation arrived in a second police cruiser. This one pulled up quietly behind the first. A much older, more seasoned officer got out. He had a graying mustache that had clearly seen its share of blizzards and neighborhood disputes. His name tag read Davis. He walked over with the unhurried gait of a man who was on the back nine of his career and had zero patience for nonsense. "What we got here, Miller?" he asked, his voice a low, tired rumble. Seems to be a civil dispute, Sarge," Miller reported, looking relieved. "HOA rules versus a private contractor." Sergeant Davis cut him off with a raised hand. He ignored me completely. He ignored the trucks. He fixed his gaze directly on Carol. "Ma'am," he said, his voice flat and devoid of emotion. "Are you the individual who called 911 to report a snowplow doing its job during a blizzard?" The way he said it made it sound like the stupidest sentence ever uttered in human history. "They are not authorized," Carol insisted, her voice cracking. "He cut a lock. They trespassed." "Ma'am," Sergeant Davis said, taking a slow step closer to her. "Let me be very clear. You cannot physically lock hundreds of people in their homes during a state of emergency. That borders on unlawful imprisonment. These gentlemen," he gestured to us, "are providing an essential service that allows citizens to get to hospitals and fire stations, and, you know, their jobs. You, on the other hand, are wasting valuable and limited police resources on a night when there are actual emergencies happening. Go home. Now." He didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. Every word was a lead weight. "But the decorative concrete?" Carol stammered, her last line of defense. "I don't care about
Face near top left 1 hour, 37 minutes. Face near top left edge.
Snapping. "I care about the ambulance that might need to get down this street. Now go home. If I have to come back here tonight, it won't be to talk to him." He jerked a thumb in my direction. Carol stood there, sputtering, her face a crumpled mask of pure, impotent rage. Defeated, she turned without another word and trudged back to her house, her bright yellow parka a beacon of humiliation in the swirling snow. Sergeant Davis watched her go. Then he turned to me. He looked at the perfectly cleared street, then at the trucks, then at me. A tiny glimmer of a smile touched the corners of his mustache. He gave me a single curt nod. "Looks good. Get it done and get out of here. Try not to make a habit of this." "Yes, sir," I said, a massive grin spreading across my face. He and Miller got back in their cars and drove away, their lights disappearing into the storm. There was a moment of stunned silence. Then Big Mike let out a huge laugh and slapped me hard on the back, nearly sending me face first into the snow. "Operation Thunderplow," he roared, "is a complete success." The next morning, the world was transformed. The storm had broken, and a brilliant cold sun shone down from a painfully blue sky. It glinted off at least 2 feet of fresh, untouched powder that blanketed every roof and lawn, turning Serenity Meadows into a pristine winter wonderland. Everywhere, that is, except for the roads. Our roads were beautiful, black, and bone dry, steaming slightly in the morning chill. It looked like a special effect, a perfectly clear path carved through a wilderness of snow. Sarah had left for the hospital at 6:30 a.m. without so much as a slip of her tires. Mission accomplished. As I was outside with a shovel, clearing my own walkway, the neighborhood began to stir. Doors opened. People emerged, blinking in the bright sunlight, expecting to be entombed. Instead, they were greeted by freedom. First, Dave came over from next door, carrying 2 steaming mugs. He handed one to me. It was coffee, strong and black. "You did it, you magnificent bastard," he said, shaking his head in awe as he surveyed the clear street. "You actually did it. I watched the whole thing from my window. It was better than Netflix." "Just a little creative problem solving," I said with a shrug, trying to sound humble and failing miserably. Then Mrs. Gable from across the street, an elderly woman who rarely left her house, shuffled over. She was holding a plate of what looked like still warm chocolate chip cookies. "Young man," she said, her voice trembling slightly, "I have a cardiologist appointment this morning that I absolutely could not miss. Thank you. Thank you so much." One by one, they came out. People I'd only ever waved to brought me donuts. They gave me thumbs ups. They called me a hero. It was deeply uncomfortable and utterly fantastic. I was the William Wallace of suburban snow removal. The best part, the true cherry on top of this Sunday of petty victory, was the masterpiece Big Mike's crew had left behind. As a final parting gift, they had taken all the snow from the central cul-de-sac and piled it into a single, massive, densely packed snowbank. A snowbank that stood at least 8 feet high and was positioned perfectly at the end of Carol Peterson's driveway, completely and utterly blocking in her pristine white Lexus SUV. It wasn't just a pile of snow, it was a sculpture, a monument to her defeat. She wouldn't be going anywhere for a while. Not without hiring Stan and his Frosty's friends pickup to spend half a day chipping away at it. The irony was so thick you could taste it. The fallout was swift. An emergency HOA meeting was called via Zoom that Saturday. The story of Plowgate, as it was now being called, had spread like wildfire. Dave gave me a play-by-play via text. Apparently, Carol tried to defend herself, waving a copy of the bylaws at her webcam and ranting about infrastructure and unauthorized vendors. But no one was listening. They had tasted freedom. A vote of no confidence was called. The result was a landslide. Carol Peterson was officially removed from her position as HOA president. Her reign of terror was over. The bylaw about authorized contractors was the first one on the chopping block at the next meeting. The following Monday, I was sitting in my home office, sipping my coffee and enjoying the view of my liberated neighborhood, when a new email popped into my inbox. It was from the newly appointed
Gmail.
interim
Now.
HOA
Google Alerts.
board.
Google
The
Alert.
subject line
Daily
read,
Digest.
"An
Google Kenny
invitation
Loggins
to
Web.
run
It's
for HOA
1966.
president."
And Kenny Loggins is a senior at San Gabriel Mission High School in Ellipsis. Instagram. It's 1966. And Kenny Loggins is a senior at San.
Posts, fielding complaints about overgrown hedges. I pictured becoming the very thing I had fought against. I snorted. A loud, undignified laugh that made Buster lift his head from his bed. Then, with a single, satisfying click, I moved the email into the trash folder. Yeah, right. I solved one problem. I wasn't about to make it my full-time job. Some dragons are best slain just once. Besides, I think I'll just stick to reading the fine print and keeping a good pair of bolt cutters in the garage. You know, just in case.
Okay. Well, that is... I don't think we're going to do another
The morning air
story.
in the Colorado Rockies has a
No.
specific kind of purity. a crispness that feels like it's scrubbing your lungs clean with every breath. On this particular Tuesday in February,
There we go. Sorry, guys. The ramp is pretty much done now. I'm just sweeping it off now. And so we won't have enough work to do for the final story, but I hope you guys really enjoyed that show. I enjoyed doing it. It's so much nicer to do work when you have a story that's funny and, you know, especially a story about people gaining victory over stupidity. And in this case, we had two. And let me just see if this is
Phase near 1 hour, 45 minutes, 17 seconds. Phase near top left edge.
Okay, so, and the thing is, why HOA stories? I mean, we're going to be doing a lot of work with HOA type stories and other types of stories like that. I found my first HOA, like I've been reading Reddit stories and stories about malicious compliance and things like that for the last 5 years, well, for about 4 years.
Phase near top left edge.
Excuse me. I'm just getting over a cold, guys, and being out here in this air doesn't help me. But anyways, I had been reading a bunch of things about malicious compliance and stuff like that for a little while, and it kind of intrigued me, because I've been living under a lot of petty rules most of my life, and a lot of things that people want to put into my life that are discriminatory, and of course being a self-advocate, and you know, I think by definition, if you're a self-advocate, you're just sort of by default an advocate for others as well, because if you get your own needs met, most of the time you get other people's needs met too. But yeah, as a self-advocate, and then as a peer support advocate, I've actually seen a lot of crazy rulage happen that really has a bad effect on people with disabilities. And it's not that good. And I think, is that my husband? No, it isn't. Anyways, so then so it kind of gave me a chuckle, you know. And then I started seeing these AI produced stories, and I don't know if the people are writing. I think this channel is called Sovereign Justice, which is the channel we got our 2 stories from today for this show. And yeah, this channel is called Sovereign Justice. They I just read a post from them that says that they actually write their own stories. They do use a story template. If you notice, you'll notice as we continue to use them, you'll see the story template come out. But they also, I know that they are filling it in themselves, because the liners, these ones had some good one-liners in them, but you'll notice as we do more shows with this channel and their stories, their one-liners are brilliant, and their one-liners and their humor is just absolutely spot on and amazing, and you'll really like it. So these ones are written at least partially by human beings, and some of them aren't. Some of them are written simply just by AI, and you can tell, and from other channels, and then some of them are written completely by humans and just simply read by the AI voices. And let's face it, this is 2026, and I heard my first HOA disabilities advocacy story. This is kind of disabilities advocacy, Oh, here, that one's my husband. You can hear the power steering belt. 1 moment. 1 minute. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed the show. And it looks like I need to get moving and doing something else. So, for J Castro 25 and Purple Passion Wellness, and hopefully Roy and Maggie Brave, this is Maggie Bray signing out and wishing you guys a blessed day, and we'll see you guys in the next episode.